except I just realized that it's funny. Zoom won't let me cancel out of there. There we go. All right. Well, thank you for having us for the Bay Area Agile Leadership Group. I'm John Halberstadt. I'm here with Nick Daniel. And thanks again for the invitation. I know we don't have a whole lot of folks, but thank you for joining. And please, one of the things that's cool about having only a few folks here, and those of you who are watching this recording, you might feel a little tiny bit jealous. We'll see at the end of this that we'll have the opportunity for some real direct personal questions related to any of this. So please, Elena and Hanu, please stop us along the way. We're going to jump into talking about, go ahead and get this started and start sharing. We're going to be talking about improving agile ways of working, right? The Bay Area Agile Leadership Network. I'm a San Jose boy, grew up on 13th Street in Negley Park. We moved over to the east side, Maybury and White, McKee area. So if you're familiar with East San Jose, right before Milpitas, that's where I grew up. That's where I started my career. So I'm a Bay Area boy, South Bay. Um, and really happy to be here with all of you. And we're going to talk about agility and really truing back to agile principles. We're going to, as a backdrop of this, show a tool that our company has put together. But what we're talking about is going to be really tool agnostic. So as we go through these examples, um, wherever you are on your journey of agility and AI, um, this tool that we'll talk about is available for free. It's open source. But even if you can't or don't want to use that tool, the important part is to use whatever tools you have to apply these principles and practices. We use them at our company. We find them to be very helpful. And so we'll demonstrate that today in real life. And this is Nick and I are going to be presenting this together. So that's going to be kind of fun too. Is tag teaming in two different locations is also a lot of fun, interesting. So this is our mascot for N-DX. And so we'll talk about agile product and software craft in AI-enabled delivery. Everyone can see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, just keep going. And again, we want to true back to the agile principles. I was an agilist before I was all of the other things that I'm doing these days, including being a consultant. I used agile for my teams, not as a consultant, but those principles and the philosophy behind it was what got me started. And I think that's what got all of you most likely started. So we really want to think about how we can work together with these tools supporting us rather than just being AI led. So Nick, as the co-founder of N-Dash, could you tell us a little bit about who we are?
Yeah, absolutely. So in N dash, we all are familiar with a hyphen, and we all are familiar with an M dash now, thanks to ChatGPT and everything else. An N dash is the one that is not as long as an M dash, but longer than a hyphen, and it represents a connection between two entities. So if you were to say from here to there, you wouldn't put a hyphen in there, you'd put an N dash. From A to B, you'd put an N dash. Before to after, an N dash. And that's what we focus on, is helping clients bridge that gap. We focus primarily on product technology and ways of working, or processes, and helping companies use those and rework some of the what they have going in those three areas to get from where they are to where they want to be. We do this because, and there's a reason we're in between. We don't want to be there forever. We want to, and we do show people that they can take their intuitions and become their own N-dash, become their own transformation. So get them to where they want to be, and then show them that they can continue to iterate in that Kaizen continuous improvement mindset.
And that is, by the way, why I'm here. Nick and I go way back before I was part of N-Dash, and that was what got me hooked. So a little bit more. So introductions, I always say, I'll say this for Nick so he doesn't have to. It's always a little bit weird when you're actually looking at us directly through video and you see us on a PowerPoint. So
Yeah, I think I shaved for that picture, so I look a
you
little
look
different.
so happy.
Yeah, so I'm software engineer by trade, but over the many years have had the opportunity to fill in a lot of different areas. I'm full stack engineering, but really full stack product development. So from tech lead to product owner to ADL, even designer. I am not the best at all of those roles, jack of all trades, master of none, maybe. But it gives me a lot of empathy for my teammates and the folks that I work with to deliver products holistically.
Thank you. And still weird to see me while I'm looking at me talking to you about who I am, but happy to be again back with the Bay Area Agile Leadership Network. Was here a couple of years ago, I think, talking about getting started with AI back in the days where we needed to talk about how we get started with agile ways of working and how AI could help us. So this is nice to be back amongst friends in my own hometown. Um, my background, also like Nick's, in a lot of ways, as far as uh, jack of many trades, a master of none. But I have spent a lot of time from an agile leadership perspective, project leadership perspective, agile coach, scrum master, agile project manager, PMO, VMO type work. And so, obviously, a lot of what we talk about, I'm not a software engineer, but how Nick and I, in this example, like for a lot of teams, how we're able to work together, that's really the sweet spot there. So, my background, though, is primarily on the process and ways of working side at the team level, but at the enterprise level, and with really a focus on project leadership, agile and traditional. And then our last introduction, I couldn't, this, thank you. I'm glad I got the smile. Hanu, I hope you're smiling, even though I can't see you on video, because this is our mascot. And thankfully, Nick is very patient with me in creating mascots. But um, I don't like anthropomorphizing tools. That's a bad enough problem with AI in general. But when we talk about what we're talking about today, it's really all of the things that we do in terms of agile teams today and how this is the example tool that we'll talk about. But again, whatever tools that you have available that can accomplish these same things, use them. But for today, we'll talk about a tool that we've got. And if you don't have something, if you'd like to, again, it's free and it's open source that was built, that we built so that we could do this sort of work. And when Nick and I, but primarily Nick, go through some of the specific examples, you can see as a non-software engineer, hey, this tool is actually making this make sense to me as the agile coach for the team. And that is a really big deal for shared understanding on the team. And that's what it's all about. Plus, I just thought it was kind of cool. Um, so doing a poll for two people is a maybe not the best thing, but I'll just, Elena and Hanu, if you're comfortable saying this out loud, how helpful is AI for you in the work that you're doing today for your org and your team? Are you finding it that it's moving the needle in a positive way, net neutral, um, to the extent that you're using it, or are you using it? But if you are using it for day-to-day work, how helpful are you finding it?
Well, for me and my team, it's definitely I would say that it was it is pretty helpful when it comes to research, writing anything, or editing, or doing slides or whatnot. All the mundane tasks of the consultant,
Right.
that the one that we don't like to do now, it's they seem all pretty easy. However,
Yes.
I'm noticing this is not team related, but for example, today I was on a call with a bank which had AI customer support, and it was so unscrutable, and it was offering gazillion of options, none of that which suited my need, and I couldn't get past through that. So I found that like extremely irritating, and I also was thinking, where that would go, that we would not be able to get to the live person ever.
Yes,
So there's
absolutely.
that and that, like two ends, right?
Right. Well, and that's part of what we'll actually talk about. Like for us, philosophically, and practically, I guess. Well, I often say it's fungible. It's like money, right? Money's not good or bad. It depends on what you spend it on, and those can be good or bad things. And how AI is applied, we're very much. We actually published a book out of N-Dash recently on AI governance, specifically because there's a lot to be excited about, but also there's a lot of downsides. And that example that you just talked about in terms of the customer service, it's a net negative. It's not saving anyone any time. And we also capture, we have a running list that we share in our trainings of these are the things where AI has failed in these scenarios in the real world, chatbots giving away cars for $1 and those sorts of things, or telling you that you can break the law in New York City, those sorts of things. So I think what we'll talk about today and the good uses of it is how can we leverage these technologies specifically in agile ways of working, as a means to an end, not the end. And that's a lot of what really the focus is how can AI, in this case, this tool, but the mindset behind that tool, how can it enable us to have better conversations and better shared understanding? So simple, not easy. We say that a lot. But that's good to know. And again, everyone is using it today, and the mundane stuff is great. We want to get the mundane stuff out of the way. What we'll talk about today in some of these examples, really, I think, is the next couple of levels deeper of truly on agile ways of working, agile teams, how we can use AI for good, like the money example. Like, how can we make this so it's a real strong net positive? So,
Can I pause you, John? It
oh,
looked like
please, yeah,
Anu
yeah.
came off mute for the
Oh, please,
last
I'm sorry. Yes,
slide
I
as
didn't see it.
well.
Yeah. Hanu, if you're there, sorry, I didn't see. There you go.
Oh, I'm here. I'm here. Yeah, I'm listening. Thank you. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Yeah, just saw you come off mute for a second. Sorry if I missed that, but we'll keep going. Feel free to jump in at any point, really like this, even though it's a small group, sometimes that's the best conversation is when
sure,
it's
sure,
small. So
sure. I'm here. Yeah, thank you.
wonderful. Thank you. So, truing back to Agile basics. So I fell in love with Agile ways of working, in the early 2000s because I was doing the work, my teams were doing the work, and this was a better way and more humane way of working. So, I'm going to dust these off. I don't know how often people look at them anymore. Maybe I see you smiling. That's a good sign, right? So before
Wasn't
we had
there the
eight,
recent approach to rewrite them or to update them? There was, I think, a recent approach either with Agile Alliance or with somebody was doing something.
I know that there have been some interesting little things that Scrum.org has specifically like added on, like the Scrum expansion pack. Like I'm being recorded, so I should be careful with my opinions on such things. But things that are timeless, and these are timeless to me. I don't know that the part of actually putting them on this deck was when Nick and I were talking about this conversation. We're OG. I don't know that we're gangsters, whatever the G stands for, but we're original agilists. Like we love agile ways of working, and these principles, like they're more important now than ever because if you think about them, and the point of having this on the slide is these are more enabled by AI. These are more possible for agile teams now than they ever were before because of the stuff like what we're going to be showing. Good afternoon, Ramesh. Because of what we'll be showing, we now can true back to those principles. Like the first one that's not hidden, right? Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. That's what today's conversation and what this is all about is being able to deliver on these things. Seven, I just hidden by this chunk of text, right? Working software is the primary measure of progress. Those are things that this tool will enable teams to do, and I don't have to wait 2 weeks. Maybe it's what Nick and I were talking about this earlier. Maybe it's 2 days. Maybe it's 2 hours. Maybe we have a 2 hour sprint. That's what you can do today. And that's more agile, little a agile than ever. So, Nick, if you want to talk a little, whoop, apparently I hit the wrong thing. I, I think you may have had a little bit more to add on this slide, if I may.
Yeah. So AI, just like within development purely, you can get a lot more done. But if you don't have a lot of these fundamentals and foundations down, all that happens is that they get exposed more and more and they hurt more and more. And you're not actually delivering more value. You might be delivering more software, but you're probably delivering more defects. And you're probably delivering the wrong features, things that might not be used. So just like within the pure development space with AI, if we zoom out one level and look at the whole product development cycle, the same pattern applies where if we're not following these fundamentals, then any issues that we have right now, they're not going to go away. They're just going to be exacerbated. So it's really important that we focus on hardening these fundamentals and building a strong foundation, and that involves truing back to these core principles.
Thank you. So you'll note that I'm repeating myself by design, at least in some cases. But to Nick's point, Agile and Lean here, they're still anchoring the work, these principles and practices. We want to deliver value in smaller increments, inspect and adapt, and get things in the hands of customers as quickly as possible. We want to make work visible. So where there's blockers, dependencies, any of those sorts of challenges that we all run into, the sooner we make them visible, we may not have all the solutions, but the sooner we make them visible, the sooner we can figure out what to do about them. We want to reduce the handoff waste. One of the things that I've really enjoyed in all of the ways Nick and I did contract work and still do in some cases for some of our clients. One of the things I like about working with Nick and his tool has just made it a lot better for other team members as well, especially if they don't have as much context, is to reduce that handoff waste because we've got all this context. So everyone has that shared understanding. That is another fundamental principle of when we all understand what we're doing and where we're coming from, what we're working on, we'll know how to work better together. Building that quality in. So I have not been an engineer in any meaningful way. I've written some code and it's embarrassingly bad. And thankfully, nobody I know still has any access to any of that code base. I do have a CD somewhere, but I really, quality though has been a big part of my career in building QA teams. And it's really important for all the work that we do. And Nick just alluded to that. And Nick, I don't know if you could take us home with this slide and the next, I'm sorry, this item and the next one related to Kaizen, because I think they're related. But this idea of these lean principles and removing waste and not creating waste to begin with.
Yeah, and it's Kaizen, continuous improvement. It's always been important, but because the landscape always changes. So even when you think you've found the perfect process, well, next year a new version of the framework comes out, or there's an M&A going on, and your team changes. But now it's not next year. It's next month, next week, maybe tomorrow when the new frontier model comes out or the latest AI tool is released. So uh, we think it's that much more critically important that people really embrace the how can we make today better than yesterday, and not just throw their hands up and say, well, this is the way it's got to be. Um, and that goes across the whole delivery system. And the reason this is an agile focused talk is because a developer on their own is not going to be able to deliver that product all the way through. They need collaboration from the people that really embody all those other principles of product and delivery. So yeah, Kaizen.
We're big fans. Change is good. The literal translation of Kaizen. Once I saw that in the kanji, I think that may be the next tattoo. So using AI for shared context. Um, and we look at it as three disciplines with one delivery system. And as Nick has mentioned, I think, and I've alluded to as well already, it's not just about moving faster. It's about getting the right things done more thoughtfully. We ultimately will move quickly, but that is really not the goal. We really don't want to move fast and break things. We want to avoid breaking things to begin with. We really want to make better decisions, and that idea of making that the collaborative decisions, as Nick was talking about, we want to have a way, and AI helps us here to enable that. So agile leadership, the hat that I often wear, and Nick wears this as well, right? But on a lot of teams, you've got folks who are somewhat siloed about their background. So for me in the agile leadership hat, I'm going to work from a process perspective, make sure that we've got transparency, make sure that our tools are set up properly so that we can manage our work, that we can really see where we have issues with flow, et cetera, and help the team to be able to get its work done in the most efficient and effective and collaborative way together. One of the things that Nick and I have geeked out about, and we really are fans of the product operating model and product in general. But on a lot of teams, that is a different hat, right? So it would be not the software engineer, it wouldn't be your agile leader. It may be your, well, likely your product owner, but it could be somebody else in a similar construct. That needs to be part of what we're doing as a team as well. We need to not lose sight of the bigger picture as well as what this product, Nick was, the problem with AI now among them is that you can very easily create any number of features that no user will ever want to use, and you will make your product more complex. But it's very easy to do the wrong things with AI. Product thinking helps us avoid that. And then, Nick, as you had mentioned, we've got this idea of craft.
Yeah, and it's certainly a lot easier to create code now, but it's also a lot easier to create really, really terrible code. So there's a lot of different tactics and strategies that are making their rounds right now about how to take your AI tooling and give it some best practice grounding and all of that. That is very important right now, especially as everyone's getting inundated with more and more merge requests or pull requests. These engineers, you'd think that, oh, AI makes their life easier, but across the board, pretty much everybody reports, no, I'm doing a lot more work now, because a lot of the code that's being generated is not grounded in good software craft.
Right.
And when all these things work together, you actually can get delivery that is faster and that is delivering quality faster because you don't have isolated efforts. You have a team working together and iterating and refining their workflows together.
Yeah. Thank you. And that really, I mean, I think this slide might be the best representation of the impetus for this conversation because so many people are talking about how easy it is to create apps and to create features. But unless you look at it holistically, it's all for naught, right? It's very easy to create the wrong things very quickly these days. But to Nick's point, these three areas, AI can bring them all together and allow our teams to work more effectively without losing those things that really matter and not just trying to get more and more features out of a vibe coding tool. So the collaboration pattern, and Nick, I'll bring this out.
Yeah.
But this is, love to have you speak to this a little bit more detail.
Yeah, so this is not something that is necessarily AI specific. It's not something that is going to be new to anybody. But we break it down into these because it's helpful when we think about where to inject or where to pause when we talk about AI tooling within the process. So the analysis still needs to happen, and there's analysis at the product level, but what we're going to demo in the next slide is at more of the technical level where you might have a good product idea, but it requires awareness of the current technical infrastructure and technical framing. Even if it's a brand new product, you still have the company environment that it's within, but especially within an existing product, there's a lot of technology already in place. And so what might seem like an easy feature to implement, once you talk to the distinguished engineer or whomever it might be, you find out that no, that's an extra large, even though I thought it was an extra small. After that analysis, we need to plan. And without consistency in how we break down work and how we think about work, even without AI, it's very difficult. This is one of the first things that we talk to any teams about with agile delivery is, well, let's get some consistency in how we're breaking down these items into tasks or subtasks or features or epics. With AI, it becomes a little bit easier to remove some of that institutional knowledge and take it out of a definition of ready that's in a Confluence page that's in a space that nobody visits, buried 12 folders deep. Though the effort there is commendable and can be very helpful for teams, a lot of times those sorts of plain content documents don't get respected. So it's an area where we can inject AI to get some consistency. The execution that follows that also, that's when we're looking at the definition of done. So are there tests that validate this? Is analytics in place? Were there any regressions? All of that stuff. Again, if we can thoughtfully inject AI, we can get consistency there that doesn't rely on. And Elena, you mentioned some mundane tasks, and a lot of times going through and checking off definition of done is one of those mundane tasks that if you've got a great and diligent team, they'll follow it, but all too often it gets left as the last task that might not get done before you close the sprint, and then before you know it, definition of done is more of a suggestion of done. And the last bit, we talk about Kaizen and continuous improvement, the learning and the feeding back of those delivery signals into all the other processes. And this last bit is really what turned our AI development efforts from stray threads that we were trying things into what we'll show here, which is N-DX, which is DX, if you haven't heard that acronym, is developer experience. So our N-DX tool was built as a result of taking some of these delivery signals that we saw and trying to systematize them so that we had that consistency.
And let me see if I can get my pointer back to the right window. So do you want me to go through this, bring these up, and then I think we're going to do some screen sharing.
Yeah. So
Nick, are the tools here? Is the framework, source vision, and
I'm about to demo them actually.
Okay.
Thank you for asking. Yeah. So N-DX is composed of three primary components: source vision, Rex, and Hench. And what I'll show here in a second, once I give this overview, is what source vision is. And source vision is meant to provide that shared technical context. So a lot of times to get that analyze phase, you have to find the right distinguished engineer or the right subject matter expert or tech lead, and you have to make sure that they have the time to review your requests and think about filtering that in for planning. So source vision helps take that out of one person's institutional knowledge, out of their brain, and put it into an artifact that lives alongside a code base that shows a lot of these structures and architectural makeup of a code base. That leads to a much more decentralized understanding of a code base, and it reduces the time drastically, not just for those distinguished engineers, but also for the juniors, that it might take them 6 months to really get a full understanding because it's a language they're not used to, it's a framework they're not used to. And now we can start to use these tools to provide that really out of the box. So I'll share my screen right now.
Yeah, let me stop sharing.
I think it'll just override it. Everyone can
Figured
see this?
it would just in case. Yeah, it's very large.
Yes, it should be.
Good. Then you have checked that box, sir. Yeah,
So
no, it's good.
the typical use case is a developer would look at something like this, which is a bunch of files, and it's very confusing about where to even start. I would know as a developer that most of the code lives in this one folder out of the 50, and that I would go through here and start to open up some core component files and try to understand what makes up this application. That is very difficult to do. It is very time consuming, and it requires a lot of experience in that programming language and that framework. So source vision is one of the components of N-DX, and source vision, once you run it on your repository, it gives you a quick overview of what's the health of this repo, how many files, lines of code, but it shows you something different. It starts to break down this code using edge detection and import detection to show you what really comprises your application from an architectural zone standpoint. So this application is a way of tracking skills. So in that, we've got assessments that people can take, there's a notification center, there's a super admin area. If I click on any of these domains, I also get all of the files that comprise that domain, as well as these import graphs that make up these files. So instead of me going through and identifying in this structure, okay, well, here's my domains of memberships, and I can open up these files and see what imports what. I'm automatically given a visual that helps me step through and I can go and survey an individual file, or I can just get an understanding of the code base as a whole and see, well, what's really making this up? What's talking to what? And where am I crossing boundaries that perhaps I shouldn't be? Sometimes, I mean, you need to cross boundaries in applications, but there are ways to surface that more elegantly for your technical leads or any engineer to quickly onboard into a repo and understand what might be affecting what. If I change what the membership repository looks like, what files am I going to be looking at and affecting? And that's great for collaborating with your warm-blooded grade 8 teammates that we've got here. But it also does something else with that analysis by producing an LLMs.txt and producing a context.markdown file. So these files are easily consumed by any other coding agent that you might be running or using. And this gives me that web UI in a very friendly way for any code base. Instead of having to browse every file in the repo, it will just consume your LLMs or your context markdown and quickly understand, how is this code playing, how is this code interrelated with each other, and if I change a file somewhere, what might be affected somewhere else. So that is the source vision portion of N-DX, and we can jump back into the slides.
Yeah, I was going to do that as part of the, and thank you for that, the overview, and for folks on the line who don't have a super software engineer background, like myself, but work with software engineers as part of the team. What I would say, real world, like, and when I say real world, like, we actually have these conversations at N-Dash for the products that we're building. I'm not, what Nick just went through, like, that's not going to be something that I can have a strong opinion on. What I can do is when Nick brings that up and shows some areas of extreme complexity, especially from a visual perspective, I don't have to understand everything that is happening there. By definition, and showing that level of complexity, if we're talking about wanting to make some changes, that is something, and Nick, jump in, correct me if anything, if you disagree with any of this, but when we look at that level of complexity, it may be, oh, this is touching all of these different things. As a coach, as an ADL, as a Scrum Master, being able to talk about that in the context when we're doing planning or refinement or something else, that is our job. Not to tell people what their estimate should be or anything like that, but to say, we've got some additional objective quantitative data. Thank you. So,
And that makes me, this isn't a super technical lens, so I wasn't planning on diving into this, but that also brings up the point of the conversation around technical debt, where a lot of times it's difficult to have the conversation of, we really need to change this because it's an anti-pattern. One of the things that Source Vision does after it does this component analysis is it will go through and identify suggestions for, hey, this is an anti-pattern. This is an anti-pattern. Maybe you have duplicate helper functions. Source Vision identifies that and makes the conversation between the technology and the product leads a lot simpler by showing, here's the real world impact of this technical debt. Sorry to cut you off there, John.
No, you didn't at all, and thank you for bringing that up. So I think, again, and I know you hadn't intended on doing that. Thank you for doing that, and thanks team for letting me do the scenic route. But the reason that I did that is, again, real world. When I've come into new teams, and right, and I know I'm being recorded, but the conversation's never the conversation, right? Nobody wants to say we've got a brittle code base. Nobody wants to say we've got all these things that we cut corners because we had to do that release. And remember, you told us we had to do that. Remember, you told us we had to do that. Nobody wants to have that conversation, but most of us inherit products or projects, and in some cases, for me, entire organizations who have, and I see the smile on your face, so you know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Of course.
So this is an objective way for us Scrum Masters and coaches and folks involved in the ecosystem to have a data-based objective. It's not my opinion that we have tech debt. This is what it looks like. That helps Scrum Masters, coaches, anybody within the team feel comfortable in that psychological safety that we talk about, right? We need to be able to tell the truth. It's easier to tell the truth if you've got objective data behind that. This system is providing that. So even if you're not an engineer, this will help with those conversations of, well, why can't you do this in a day? Because, and this is anything that helps with shared understanding and conversation is going to help the product and what we're working on. So you didn't cut me off at all, Nick. Thanks for the opportunity to raise that because, again, that's what it's about. We're not showing off some new shiny tool. We are, it's a new shiny tool, but that's not the point. The point is that what we can do is all the things for us Agilists that are difficult right now because we don't have good ways to talk about them or see them. This is the tool that was built to solve some of those problems for us. So with that, the next piece of this three-part tool, using AI to plan better. And we really, we think that irrespective of role, planning is going to always be better. Like what I was just talking about, when technical reality shows up earlier, right? We have to understand what's true and then we can deal with it, right? So in a lot of cases, the story can look ready from a product perspective. This is where people like me, historically, earlier on in my career, especially get in trouble. Like it's easy to do. Monty Python fans of the wafer thin mint, if you remember that quote. I use that periodically. Not everyone gets it, but if you do, you know what I'm talking about, and I'm sorry for the visual. But we don't always understand that that little change could have a whole bunch of impacts from an implementation perspective, because that's not our background. This helps us with that understanding. That earlier technical context helps us to split that work up more intelligently. Like maybe that one story is actually 10 different stories because of the level of complexity and how it's going to be implemented. So AI can help us. We all, before AI, we all needed to figure out good techniques for splitting epics and splitting stories and really having them, in their atomic level sizing. This is another way that really helps with that. Dependencies, right? How often it's like, well, my piece is done, but we're waiting for this deployment. We're waiting for this framework to be installed on this particular server. Now everyone's running out of tokens. Insert your trauma or problem here, but dependencies become visible before they become blockers. And then finally, I'm gonna, Elena, you're the one who's on video, so I'll look at your facial expressions as I read this one. Acceptance criteria. How hard is it for us to get decent acceptance criteria? It's really difficult, right? To really have both functional and non-functional acceptance criteria that works. So all of that is something that these tools can help us with, but it's not like this wasn't a problem for us before the tool. Sorry for the double negative. These were problems that we had. The tools can help with that and really helping these issues that we've always been dealing with since we started working as far as agile ways of working. So, Nick, as far as Rex and the second piece,
Yeah. Yeah. So Rex, why is it called Rex and why is there a T-Rex? Rex is N-DX's way of tracking product requirements. So PRD is your product requirement doc. That is your product Rex, your product requirements. So Rex is the component of Source Vision or of N-DX that helps to take intent and turn it into something that is not just structured, but it's structured with the context of the existing product requirements. So this will help break down in a consistent way any, just human language feature request into something that is consistent with sizing and consistent with scope and fits in nicely to your existing product recs. This is something that we have within N-DX, but this is an area that every team, when we talk about how do we get AI into our process, you don't need to have a huge, robust tool suite. You don't need to have a small open source tool like N-DX. You just need to have something that's giving you that consistency of breaking down into reliably workable items that have clear acceptance criteria. I will give a demo of what that looks like within N-DX. So you're a developer, you get a ticket. This is Notion, but you can have this in Asana or Jira or Monday or whatever. And you have a title that's misspelled with 3 Gs, I guess. And a lot of times you'll just get a description that's something like the user should be able to add a light dark mode toggle, and they should be accessible, and they should be able to set it to default to the system settings. It might not even be as robust as this. But what we do with N-DX, and again, if you've got Claude or ChatGPT, you can set up a skill or a project or a GPT that has some consistency. What we have within N-DX is that same construct, just using alongside all of our other tools. So I'm going to go over to the command line, and it's going to look ugly for a second, so just bear with us. When N-DX can be used from a web browser tool or from the command line interface, developers will not be afraid of something like this. And I'll show you what this translates to. So what we can do with N-DX is we're in this repo of Apture, which it looks like it's a typo, but it's not. It's just a code name for a product. And we just say N-DX add, and I just copy and paste in whatever is in that Notion ticket. I say, all right, this is good enough. It's clear enough to me. If I were to think more about this, I could probably break this down into acceptance criteria. So I feed that in, and I have it configured to use Claude Sonnet 4.6 right now. And this breaks it down into an epic, a feature, and 3 tasks. And before I go through and show you all this, let me show you what it looks like in the web UI, where we can see this Apture repo. These are all of the product requirements. It's these 8 or 7, if I could count, epics. And the one that I had just added, which I could have done live, it's pretty quick, but you never know with internet. We can see that we have a new feature that was added inside of our navigation and launch polish. It's the light dark system theme support. And this feature was broken down into 3 tasks: to build a theme toggle, to define the WCAG compliant colors, and to implement a theme provider. Each of these tasks, if I select, has a robust description that I can edit and I can modify. I can also review it in this prompt. I can say, hey, I don't want to accept this proposal. I want it to be consolidated, or I want to make some edits, or I could fine tune the acceptance criteria or the description for any of these. This is the foundation of how we take that intent and break it down into items that can be either worked by us as humans or fed into whatever your coding agent that your teams might start to be using, in a way that gives you some reliable, consistent execution, without having to go through all of the work to put together all this acceptance criteria. We still want to have this. We still want this to be clear for a human or a robot that's coding this, because we want it to do something that is reliable, and we want to be able to tweak this. So I can modify any of these. I can remove some of the acceptance criteria. But this is a very easy way for us to take that very simple user should be able to add toggle dark light mode and turn it into really well broken down, clear with acceptance criteria, and also relevant to the rest of the product. So this is housed within this navigation and launch polish because it's going to be up in that navigation area. That's where it's going to be. So when we talk about a structured PRD, we talk about a structured, evolving PRD where Rex really should be your living product Rex, your product requirements. So as you go and add new features, we want it to refactor into what we have. This is very difficult to do manually and just in Jira. Those items often are taken as work items that you work and then they're done, and they don't give you any lineage of what actually comprises your product. That we rely on product documentation that, again, people might not look at, people might not update. So our goal here with the Rex component of our tool N-DX is to show, hey, this is what it looks like. This is how many critical or high, and give you a good overview of what actually makes up your product and what do you still have to do. This also will automatically identify blockers. So if I tell it, when I told it to add a notification center so that I could send people notifications that it's time to fill out a new assessment, it immediately identified we don't have a notification center yet. So before I can send the notification to someone, I need to make a notification center. So that is the Rex demo of N-DX. And I think
Perfect.
that covers that portion.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I definitely the ability to use natural language to, I mean, you copy and paste it. I've actually created with this tool, I had always wanted to create a little Swiss Army knife set of agile single serving tools like a stand-up facilitator and a WSGIF calculator, single purpose tools that those of us in the trade need. And I would just type those in and it would use natural language. It just built what Nick just showed you. I built an app with this tool with those singular functions that would just help me with facilitation of a lot of agile type events, activities, efforts, etc. And that was really cool. It was neat to see you copy paste it. I hadn't actually even done that, but just typing it in, like I want something that's a stand-up facilitator that gets more and more irritated the longer you talk at the stand-up, right? Because that's the problem with stand-ups is people like me will talk forever. So those are the sorts of things you can make your custom apps, but have all of that as part of the broader code base and bring them together. And that's one of the things when people talk about vibe coding, nobody's talking about the broader code base. Nobody is talking about really the hygiene and the good software craft. But the thing that I kept this slide up as we move into the next one, because you alluded to this, Nick. I just think it bears repeating, right? The point of what you did and the fact that it's in natural language and that it visualized it in such a way, everybody on the team is able to look at acceptance criteria. And we went through that pretty quickly. It created 6 or 7 different acceptance criteria items. Maybe we get rid of a couple of those, as you'd mentioned. Maybe we need to add some. We don't just do all of this carte blanche, but the benefit, this last bullet point, it's not that AI is doing the work. It's that it is making all of the work that has been done, current state, what we might do, using a common language and approach so that there's shared understanding. And that's how you get more than the sum of the parts of everybody on the team because everybody can understand that. If you don't know how to read sheet music, it doesn't matter how well you play if you're playing in an orchestra. This is sheet music, I think, or that everyone has the ability now to read that same language. So from that, if I can click on the proper window, which I apparently didn't, and I stopped sharing instead. Um, Let me get this back up. So what I'd like to go back into now, we'll talk a little bit more. So we talked about acceptance criteria, and this is a big deal, I think, for those of us in agile ways of working, is really important as a collaboration tool, right? It's not just I wrote this story, and so, Nick, you talked earlier about, definition of done. What really does that look like, functional and non-functional? That should be a team conversation, right? So AI can help provide that fodder for the conversation and provide it in a way that everyone has shared understanding. That strong acceptance criteria is what allows us to connect what our intent was from my product hat, right? My Marty Kagan, I'm the product model guy here, and what's my intent? What am I trying to accomplish, and how does that get implemented? And how can we make sure that that is a shared vision between the people who are understanding what the customer needs and the people who are building it. We want observable behavior, and that's a lot of what you saw there. Very specific. Like I don't know enough about the WCAG accessibility requirements there, but that's where AI can be really helpful. Like observable behavior, that's very specific. It's not an opinion about accessibility. It is specific standards that I don't have that expertise on. So it's nice that it helps stack the deck with that specificity in our favor. It's observable behavior, and that allows us to make sure that when we build and then when we test, it's doing what we wanted it to. It This is the part that's magical, nerdvana, as we say. For me, as somebody who doesn't write code, but adores the code that is written by the folks who I have the pleasure and privilege of working with, before we start coding things, almost all the time. In some cases, I know I'm being recorded. Sometimes things will just get written, but not for production levels. Yeah, no, not for production stuff. But we get together and we talk about what we want to do, and this allows a shared language. Nick is able to speak in non-technical language, but a lot of us on teams, we don't have teams where folks are able to do those different translation layers. So isn't it nice to have a tool who can help with that so that everyone can speak whatever that language is and that we all have that shared understanding? That stronger context. Nick had talked about it's also not a standalone. Where does this live within the rest of the feature set and functionality that's in the code base, right? I mean, we've all seen mangled features added that don't seem like they belong there. This allows that broader context and also reducing those vague outputs. But again, back to our agile roots and our lean roots, this idea of Kaizen, right? We want to get rid of waste. And there's two types of waste. One is waiting and one is rework. And this helps us, this idea of getting rid of that muda. This allows us to avoid creating things that we have to go fix as well. So acceptance criteria is incredibly valuable, and this makes it so that everybody can have that shared understanding through that acceptance criteria. Anything else you want to say on this slide before I go to the next one? Okay. So relatedly, this idea of feedback loops, and again, everything is faster. I don't know, it's the opposite of dog years or whatever, but AI, everything is exponentially faster. So let's make sure that we can work in a way where we've got our feedback loops that are tighter as well, right? If we're delivering stuff more quickly, we need to have other things that can help make sure those loops are, Nick had mentioned Kaizen earlier. We want those feedback loops. Every time we do that loop, we want to learn from that. So planning feedback and how this really can help us through the tool, right? It's not the tool focus, but the tool enables us to do things. When we're using this tool, we're able to very rapidly get these feedback loops and make the inspect and adapt, right? Is the work for planning, is the work valuable, clear, and appropriately sized? This is going to give us some data, some objective data on that immediately by using these tools. The technical feedback. As we're applying N-DX, it's helping us understand about the feasibility of work. Is it testable, right? That's really important to have a strong and clean, solid code base upon which to build. And the reality also with Source Vision is, in a lot of cases, Nick mentioned sort of greenfield or starting new, but most of us don't inherit new products and projects. We inherit somebody else's mess in a lot of cases. I see the look on your face, right? This is sort of like, this is a support group, right? It's not just a meetup group, but we've all done that. So the reality though is, isn't it cool rather than saying we've got a lot of tech debt to point it at this and go, if this was new, that wouldn't be a problem. But right now there's some brittleness that might break. Let's be careful, or maybe we prioritize that after doing some refactoring and cleanup. Execution feedback. So when we did that implementation, did it match the intent? Did we get new information coming from that? How are we doing from a quality maintainability perspective? And then retro feedback, right? I mean, this is going to be a great source of data for the team about how the team can improve because we're getting a lot of data provided to us, rich data, but also high quality data. It's not just the volume, but it is objective and it is consistent. And that's just been really a big deal for us because we all have blinders. If there's a product that I'm really emotionally connected to, or if there's a code base that I just hate working in because it's something I don't like working in, this also helps with objectivity on all of that. So in all of those cases, it really helps the team really understand what they're working on, but also really helps them look at current state and future state in an objective way. So the last piece of this with Hench and how we actually we did that analysis with Source Vision first. Rex did that really thoughtful, defined, objective way to build out the plan of the things, and we've iterated back. Yep, this is what we want to work on. So the last step, Nick, I'll just go ahead and I'm going to bring this up to talk about this last piece, which is Hench and the actual execution.
Yeah. So the LLM's text and context markdown that Source Vision created gives us a lot of context to work with. And Hench operates within that context and uses that structured PRD to make that AI assisted implementation much more reliable and consistent than if you were to just purely vibe code something. I will do a quick demo. I know we're definitely pressed on time here.
We're actually okay, I think, unless I got this wrong. We started about 10 minutes late, so I'm thinking we go to 6:40. Is that still fair? Still good?
Yeah, still fair.
Okay. So we've got the time to do it right, Nick, and then we'll still have time
Cool.
for questions if there are any.
Cool. All right, so this is a history of this application. These are all of the Hench executions that ran against the Rex PRDs. So the marketing home, the time travel UX rework, all of these things, and there's some stuff in here as well. But what I'll show is actually the meat of it. And it's very simple. It is not scary. And it is something that doesn't require, you don't need to use N-DX, even though if anybody in your team is using Claude Code or Codex, this sits right on top of it. It's a local first tool that you don't need to have anything in the cloud. You don't need to have cloud agents running. You don't need to sign up for anything. It is a package that you install locally. But even if you don't do something like that, and your developers, you're talking in retro and they're complaining about how, oh, well, it keeps on, writing this code, but it doesn't write any tests. A lot of times, a very simple harness is all that's needed. And by harness, I mean something that is fed into the AI before it starts coding to give it a consistent mechanism through which it will execute. This N-DX workflow is, I don't know, 30 lines, and it is all human readable. Any engineer can go in and read this, and anybody who uses N-DX can customize their installation to match their use case. All of the code that we've got runs through this, and it talks like, like it's giving some sermon. This code base will outlive you. Every shortcut you take.
I love that line.
It's impactful because of the shortcuts that AI will take otherwise, and the number. If you vibe code something, before you know it, 3 hours later, you have the same helper function in 20 different places throughout your code base, and it's a total mess. So even just introducing a light harness like this on top of that execution reduces 95% of that. We also have some things in here like use TDD where possible. So write a failing test, make it green, and then refactor. And if you were to sit here and watch Hench run through, it will print stuff out that says, okay, great, the tests are failing. Time for me to start writing the code. Okay, great, the tests are green. Time for me to refactor. Okay, great. And then it will present to you a commit message where it will pause and say, here's what I've done, here's what I'm going to commit, but please go validate. And then you can go and validate it and iterate from there. But this is really all that is at the core of Hench, with the exception of additionally, we have other safety guardrails in there about what sort of commands can it run and all of that. But that's more for if your developer wants to run it hands off, like if they're trying to run this overnight or something. But when you're sitting on top of, when you're watching this, sitting on it, primarily what is driving that consistent execution is something as simple as a markdown file like this. And this is what we used to build N-DX. This is the site for N-DX. This was built with N-DX. This skill evaluator built with N-DX. This HTML and Canvas demo that was mentioned in Google I/O. This
I
learn
was gonna say that
pre-type
happened
set.
today, right? Wasn't
Yeah,
that? Yeah.
yeah, that was earlier today. But
Congrats.
all of these things were built with N-DX, and all of them have full test coverage. They all have acceptance tests, so browser-based tests that are running, all because in our Hench workflow, we have specified go and make sure that you're doing these best practices. You can have an autonomous coding agent run and run and run and not follow anything, but adding that bit of rigor, just some stuff like this. What are the prohibited changes? These are what give you that AI assisted implementation that actually follows the plan. And when you get to the point of human judgment, people aren't pulling their hair out because there's no tests or because they've just recreated a whole new micro framework when one was already in place, or there's all those things that happen with AI coding, and this is a very easy way to get that to be more consistent and have some more rigor.
Excellent. All right. Well, so we got basically just about 1 or 2 slides left. And then if there are any questions, we're happy to take them, and we'll share some resources and links and stuff after the session. And I'll send those over if we'd like to send them to attendees or to the broader group.
Sure.
So with that, and thanks for letting us go a little bit over time. I skipped the Kaizen slide, which I have mixed emotions about, but we've talked about Kaizen a lot, and I know we're amongst other advocates of Kaizen as a philosophy and a way of being. So just moving forward, what we've talked about today, again, we're big fans of N-DX. It was built because we are folks who want to work in little a agile, as I like to say, ways. We really like to work aggressively, collaboratively, and build good stuff and deliver it. So open sourcing this was just part of what N-Dash is and our values. So whatever tool you use, though, and if you don't have one, check this out. If you do, the principles are what are most important from everything that Nick and I had talked about. So whatever, if you don't have a tool, you can look at this one, look at whatever you have available to you, but use AI to strengthen that shared context, like we showed. Obviously, we're partial to N-DX because it is able to, it's purpose built to allow us to get that context, especially for people like me who don't really like looking at terminal. I geek out a little bit, but I get overwhelmed pretty quickly. That allows us to bring that technical reality into planning earlier. We really want to make sure whatever tool and approach you're using, that acceptance criteria is truly testable. Use these AI tools again. Even Jira has gotten better at this particular item. It doesn't do a lot of these other things, but helping break down stories now, some of that built-in technology. So whatever you do, these agile principles about making things small and testable and of independent value, these tools really can help, and N-DX helps better than anything else I've seen. And then collect those delivery signals back to Kaizen. So whatever is actually happening with the work itself, we really want this idea, however our iterations are going, we want to constantly be looking at ways, and AI can really help us in aggressively good ways to really get back to constantly looking for areas to improve. And you can see how quickly it identify those things. So we can constantly do that virtuous cycle and loop. And with that, and Nick, if you want to take us home on our last slide, it looks like we might have something in chat as well.
That was me. I just
Oh,
sent over the tool agnostic guide we have that gives
okay.
a couple of starters. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're always here to help. We're here to have conversations. We are regularly posting plenty of new content from the things that we find, especially in this AI product development space, because we find it to be so critical. So please reach out, drop us a line, interact with us on LinkedIn or wherever. Our goal here is to have people feel empowered about the work that we're doing. Our core belief is that the way you get a really fine-tuned system is you don't try to go for maximum efficiency. You try to get the maximum intrinsic value that people get from their work. And that means people are empowered and they feel like they can change their workplace to be better today than it was yesterday. So we are always open for conversation and community building, and we really would welcome any thoughts and feedback you have about this or about anything that we post. Thanks y'all for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Great session. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you so much.